What is a toxic person? This person can be described as manipulative, self-centered, or controlling. If you're experiencing this toxicity from a friend, it can be hurtful. Toxic people tend to act this way due to low self-esteem, mental health conditions, or perhaps out of ignorance. Regardless of the reason, recognizing common toxic phrases will help prevent damage to your mental health and self-confidence. Today, on How to Charisma, we will cover 8 toxic things friends might say to manipulate and control you. Number 1, you're crazy. Perhaps you suspect coworkers are talking bad behind your back and you share your fears with your friend. If your friend immediately says you're crazy, they might be toxic. These statements are a form of gaslighting because they distort your sense of reality and hurt your self-confidence. Gaslighting is not a difference of opinion, but rather a form of emotional manipulation. By saying things like, "I didn't say that," or "something is wrong with you," these toxic people make you distrust yourself and believe them instead. Simply stated, they make you believe you are incapable of correctly understanding the situation. First of all, it's essential to remember that you are not to blame. It's hard for a gaslighting victim to recognize the emotional abuse. You often won't even notice it happening to you, at least not immediately. Watch out for lies and inconsistent behaviors because these are signs of a toxic person trying to confuse and manipulate you. These tactics are dismissive and condescending. It makes you feel like you are being ignored and your feelings are invalidated. Worst of all, the more often the gaslighter calls you crazy, the more likely you will finally believe it. Everyone has a different perspective, and you need to trust your intuition. If something feels off, ask yourself why. If someone constantly dismisses your point of view as crazy, ask yourself if this is a healthy relationship. Number 2, you are being too sensitive. Few things are more infuriating than being told that you're too sensitive or overdramatic. When someone says that you are overreacting, you feel disrespected and invalidated. The simple phrase, "I was kidding, why are you so sensitive?" is a form of gaslighting and emotional manipulation. It's hurtful and frustrating when someone dismisses your emotions. By using these phrases, toxic people will imply that your words, feelings, and behaviors are unjustified. So, how should you respond to someone telling you you're too sensitive? First, remember that your emotions are valid, regardless of what someone else may say. You can stay silent and stare back at them. You can ignore them and walk away from the situation. Lastly, you can stand up for yourself by saying, "Please, don't tell me to calm down. That phrase is dismissive and invalidates my feelings." Most importantly, walk away if the person continues to disrespect you. Walking away tells the toxic person they're not worth the effort. Remember not to sacrifice your mental health to keep a toxic person happy. Number 3, I'm sorry you feel that way. As adults, we should have learned by now to take responsibility for any toxic or inappropriate behavior. While the phrase, "I'm sorry you feel that way," briefly acknowledges feelings, it creates a safe haven for toxic people to defend themselves and explain their actions. This non-apology lacks sincerity and fails to accept any true accountability. People use this sorry gaslighting to deflect and place blame back on you. They pretend to apologize, but in reality, they dismiss your concern and end the conversation. Although this might sound sinister, sorry gaslighting is often unintentional and can be a subconscious attempt to protect one's self-confidence. You have a right to your feelings, even if your toxic friends aren't prepared to tolerate them. They need to apologize for their actions and take accountability if they are at fault. Apologies can only mend damage within the relationship if they're sincere. Although we attempt to control others, the reality is that you can only control your own behaviors. Number 4, you always or you never. If your friend often says the phrases that begin with "you always" or "you never," they may be toxic. These all or nothing statements might seem realistic to your friend, but absolutes don't typically define our reality. Overgeneralization invalidates your other positive traits and disrespects all good things you have done within that relationship. If your friend is highly toxic, they might be guilt-tripping you into behaving a certain way. So, what's a good way to respond to these exaggerations? Well, the worst thing you can do is fire back with your own toxic, always and never accusations. This counterattack will only make things worse, not better. It's important to do what makes you feel comfortable, but one recommendation is to calmly listen to what they have to say. Although they might be exaggerating, trying to validate a portion of their concern can go a long way in calming a tense situation. You don't have to agree with everything they're saying, but showing them you're listening will help things not escalate. However, if this situation escalates to verbal abuse, it's best to remove yourself from the situation. Remember that when people are outraged, they often cannot accept a point of view that's different from their own. Number 5. I'm sure it's not that bad. We've probably all heard this well-intentioned advice from a friend trying to keep things in perspective. However, their underlying message is that your emotions are invalid and your fears are unjustified. Similar toxic statements include, "It's not a big deal," or "You'll get over it." Why do people say things like this? Perhaps they don't care enough to listen or are self-absorbed with their own issues. However, many people don't realize how these statements make others feel. Toxic people are not always doing it on purpose. Some just lack the appropriate social skills and empathy to understand how their words affect others. Number 6. I'm done. We all have said things in the heat of anger. However, the phrase "I'm done" during an argument is often toxic. This phrase probably makes you feel disposable and replaceable, right? This statement threatens the end of a friendship or a romantic relationship. This decision should be made with a calm and understanding mindset, not while angry and impulsive. The best recommendation would be for both parties to take some time to calm down and get things into perspective. However, sometimes this phrase can be used intentionally to hurt or manipulate. Although not all relationships are destined to be successful, toxic people can believe that throwing away a relationship is easier than trying to resolve the outstanding issues. Furthermore, if a person uses this phrase to make you behave in a certain way, this would be an example of a very toxic and unhealthy relationship. Number 7, you're doing it wrong. Most of us have had that controlling friend who always said, "Why can't you just do it my way?" These toxic friends have trouble respecting boundaries and you as your own person. These friends probably don't realize that phrasing their advice this way could lead to someone feeling belittled, defensive, and incompetent. Although most people giving unsolicited advice are genuinely trying to help, in some cases their words come across as controlling and disrespectful. If you believe your friend has good intentions, try explaining your feelings to them. Set some boundaries and ask them to hold off giving you advice unless you request it. These individuals need to respect that you are a unique person with a unique way of doing things. No one likes a controlling and bossy friend. On the flip side, make sure you aren't a toxic friend either. Always try to respect that everyone is different and that difference is not a negative. Number 8, just forget it. When someone tells you to forget it or whatever during a disagreement, they shut down the conversation and disrespect you. This is an avoidance tactic to end the conversation and perhaps avoid blame and escalation. While that is a good thing to avoid blame and escalation, there are better ways to end the conversation. Friendships and relationships should be built upon communication and respect instead of passive-aggressive behavior. Your friend might feel overwhelmed by a crisis or just had a really bad day. No matter the reason, if your friend or partner is doing this to you, it's recommended to stop talking about the issue. Remember, you cannot force someone to talk to you. By pushing the issue, you are fighting one toxic behavior with your own toxic behavior. So, during the silent treatment, try performing some self-care and distraction to keep the anxiety under control. When that friend is willing to communicate again, set boundaries and talk about what you need to do to discuss things like this without ending in someone walking away in frustration. If you hear these phrases and consistently feel bad around someone, chances are that friend is probably toxic. Setting healthy boundaries is recommended with these friends, and having an open conversation about how their words hurt you can help improve the relationship. Above all, ditch the blame. You're not at fault for their toxic behaviors. Let us know in the comments if we missed anything. While you're there, let us know what topics you'd like covered next. Thanks for watching How to Charisma. Don't forget to like and subscribe.